But it is time to get started on our last formation meeting of the academic year. So you get the summer off, and then we'll come back strong in September. This means that we will be switching to the single service Sunday morning model next week, right? Is that
10 a.m.
So 10 a.m. next week. Don't come here, go to church. I will be sporadically here over the summer. I get to go back to Scotland in just a couple of weeks to finish up my class. Classes multiple. I have to remember that. I actually have more than one class that I have to focus on. So that's a me problem though. This morning I had big plans. I was going to give you a whole lecture on Reformed theology, and then life happened. So instead of going into detail about what Reformed theology is, the plan is going to be a lot more loosey-goosey than that. We are going to do a review of our Scotland trip, and I see lots of folks who went to Scotland. So like I said, loosey-goosey, we're going to go through a PowerPoint slide of day by day, and if we have stories to share, if we have mementos to share, pictures, anything like that, this is our opportunity to do so. So those of you who went to Scotland can reminisce. Those who didn't go to Scotland can feel bad that they missed out. And then if we have time, we have some discussion questions about our overall theme of the journey home to end the class with. So that's our plan for this morning. I'm going to open us with a word of prayer, and then we'll get going. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for this time to gather one more time in this journey home. We thank you for what we've experienced this year, learning deeply about who wrote the Bible, learning deeply about the Babylonian exile, learning deeply about what the concept of home means. As we depart from this space and enter the hot months of the year, we pray for your safety and guidance in our lives and the lives of all we meet. May we gather back here in September rested and ready to blaze trails in the direction that you are leading. In the name of the Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So about a year ago, I came home from my academic trip to Scotland, and I talked to my new supervisor, Jacob Bolton, and I said, oh, I love Scotland so much. And he said, yeah, I love Scotland so much too. And we said, why don't we go there on a church trip? That was verbatim the conversation. And that's how the journey began, to do a pilgrimage, a Reformation heritage trip to Scotland. And fortunately, there are enough people in this community who said, yeah, we want to go too, that we were able to make this trip happen in about an 8-month period. Now, sadly, Jacob is one of the ones who did not get to go, and so we'll be reminiscing sadly during this session.
I can't wait to see the photos.
Yeah, they're going to be great photos. So after many months of planning and implementing and replanning and re-implementing, we went to Scotland right after Easter. And our first day there, we were able to have an opening worship service in the parish church of St. Cuthbert. Now, this is the site of the oldest Christian worshiping space in Edinburgh. Now, it says 7th edition because, as we learned, the building we were in was the 7th building that had been on that site. So there had been a church in this site since, what did they say, the 700s, 800s? So about 1300 years. And this was building number 7. And this picture does not do justice to the beauty of this space. It is absolutely breathtaking. They explained to us, this is their font. This is their baptismal font right here. This whole thing. And it's marble, and there's a fresco in the back. So I'm just going to open that up to if anyone has any stories or comments they wanted to share about this first day.
No way you went on the trip.
Oh yeah, raise your hand if you went on the trip.
I've got another question. When was Iona first? When did the first missionary go to Scotland? Was it St. Augustine? or
Columba.
Columba.
St. Columba came from Ireland to Scotland, and Iona is kind of in between. And I believe it was about the same time period, 700-800s.
Okay.
563.
563.
Yeah, and we will get to Iona and we can talk
Yeah.
more about
Thank you.
Iona, but yeah, so that was the first Christian spot in Scotland. And so obviously it took
So
about
that
200 years to
church
get to
was
Edinburgh.
founded 130 years after, sort of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the things that we were able to do when we were at St. Cuthbert's was they had a chapel tucked to the side of the sanctuary that was dedicated to those who had been lost during World War I and World War II. And the list of names, the number of names was astounding. The number of people that were lost just from that parish.
Dare I interrupt again?
Absolutely, please.
On the question of war memorials in England, I went with my father-in-law at the time to England. He was a pilot in World War II, and he flew out of a town in eastern England. And we went back to his old airfield, which is now returned as a farm, but they kept the end of the runway there as a memorial, and they had an obelisk there to commemorate. But we went to the local old medieval church, and the Lady Chapel has been turned into a war memorial dedication to the American servicemen. So, excuse me, I'll say no more.
No, please do. And anybody who wants to add anything, one of the things that I am always taken aback when I go to the UK is, here in America, at least when I was learning history, World War II is always the one that's this was the devastating disaster. But when you go to the UK, it's World War I, because that was the one that so many people were lost. And so that's just kind of a change in concept.
And they were rather silly. The officers went first, so you missed a leading class with World War I. They are the first guys over the
Women
top.
who got married, either
Yeah.
potential beaux were killed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. So any other stories about St. Cuthbert? Go ahead.
Agatha Christie was murdered.
I was just gonna say that.
Thank you for remembering that.
Her
Yeah.
second marriage.
Second marriage. So the first one didn't count because it wasn't at St. Cuthbert, and then the second one.
Thank you.
So day two. This was our, we walked all over Edinburgh, it felt like. This was our walking tour of the second Reformation. This was something interesting I learned. There were actually considered two Scottish Reformations. The first one involved kind of what we all think about, John Knox and his journey. But this one, so John Knox kind of started the Reformation, and it took, and then there was a change in monarchy, and the new monarch wanted to reinstall Catholicism as the state religion, and that's when the second Reformation came. And this one was a lot more deadly, and this is at Greyfriars Churchyard, and a lot of martyrs were buried there. There was kind of a tomb of the unknown martyr there, where it was kind of, what was it, 200 people had been dumped there, and there was a monument to them.
What was the date of the Reformations? Do you know? And it doesn't matter. No.
1500.
I know. It's 1500. Give or take. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm not a historian, and I'm terrible
Okay,
with dates.
quite all
So
right. Sorry.
no, I would love to help you, but this is a picture of the grass market. This is where the martyrs were hanged, and over, where is it? There is a pub in this area called the Last Drop, where the martyrs would go and drink their last drop before they were martyred. So
These brothers were Christian, right? Who was killing them, though?
well, so they were people of the Reformed faith that were being martyred by Catholics.
Oh.
Yeah.
Back to Greyfriars Church.
Yeah.
I felt a little badly when I asked the tour guide, oh boy, is this a cemetery where Greyfriars Bobby, the little
Yeah.
dog, sat at his owner's grave for so long? And maybe I'm projecting, but I thought he looked a little bit disgusted with me because he said everybody knows about Greyfriars Bobby and nobody much knows about the 200 martyrs dumped.
Yeah. Well, so don't feel bad because same thing happened to me as we were walking towards the exit where Greyfriars Bobby is. My son went with us. He was 9, and I said, "Hey, look, Lee, you see that statue of a dog? That's Greyfriars Bobby that I've told you about." And the guy, our tour guide, just looked at me and he's like, "Yeah, I was gonna try to scooch over that." Sorry, my 9-year-old is more interested in the dog than the martyrs.
What year did that happen?
Late 1500s. I'm sorry, I'm not great with dates.
Oh, I'm sorry, they had.
And one of the things that I was wondering about is, we say you had the first Reformation with John Knox. The second Reformation, he presented is everything was okay in Scotland until Puritans were. When Charles II came back, basically he was saying that Charles II was trying to impose not Catholicism, but Church of England on Scotland with the bureaucracy of bishops. Sort of being the devil's advocate. I mean, he was talking about the Covenanters, but yet there was still, I assume, and I don't know this, there was still a parliament of some kind in Scotland, and it had Presbyterians in it. So it was leading me to believe that the Covenanters were really out there on the right wing, and they were the ones that were being martyred, but there were other Presbyterians in the parliament who maybe were more willing to reach some understanding with Charles II or with Church of England. I don't know, but he was presenting it in terms of Charles II and the Church of England forcing themselves on the Presbyterians and passing these laws, which made the ministers have to go out into the fields and wear masks and preach, and then the army, and maybe all of that was true. I don't know, but I guess I'd be interested to know what the other Presbyterians were doing.
Yeah.
In the parliament at the time, and whether the Covenanters were sort of real conservative sect out there on the right, or whether they were more mainstream.
Yeah.
Not to justify the oppression by the military and the sort of extremist laws that were, but I felt a little uncomfortable that I wasn't getting a totally balanced view of the second.
I had another tour, on my own, and I did go back there. And it's exactly what Paul said. The Second Reformation was more the Anglican group against the Covenant.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And you've been against the what?
They're called the Covenanters because they met in the fields and they all signed this covenant. Follow, like you said, the bishop type said.
I just felt that that there might be another take on that, another side. To
Absolutely.
That the Covenanters did not necessarily represent, who were the ones who were being martyred,
Yeah.
Right.
did not necessarily represent all of Presbyterians.
No, that's a great observation.
On a lighter note, Harry Potter's
Yeah.
book,
Yep.
the names in the book are in the cemetery.
Yep.
So that's where
Yeah.
Rawlings went for a lot of her
Mhm.
inspiration.
Yeah, so
And,
so
nice.
funny story that he shared with us, our tour guide, Jimmy, we're standing in this graveyard waiting for everyone to kind of gather. And he said, oh, by the way, I do have credentials. The ones that I have on me are expired by a couple of months, but I am credentialed. I just don't have the updated paperwork because of, bureaucracy. And we were just kind of looking at each other and we're like, it never occurred to us to ask for your credentials, right? And he said, because of all of the Harry Potter tours that had become so popular around Edinburgh, they were not, according to him, the Harry Potter tours specifically were not being very respectful of the historical sites. They were kind of trampling on the graves and not being kind to the history of there. And so in order to be an official tour guide, you have to get credentials and you have to meet certain requirements. And here we are. It's like, never even occurred to me to ask, you could be anybody. So that was a fun unreformed thing that we learned. So here, this is Jimmy right here. He was our tour guide, and he was very knowledgeable. And Grass Market is a very fun place to go grab a last drop. And then we did not get to tour St. Giles, but we were encouraged to go and enjoy the space. So these are pictures of St. Giles, courtesy of the Stones. And it is a currently Church of Scotland church, but it was at some point Catholic. And this is where John Knox was a pastor. And there is a big old statue of him in the cathedral. And we got to see his grave site, which is now a parking lot. And we learned that every day there is a red Audi that parks on his grave, and the red Audi belongs to the current minister of St. Giles. So if, life goals, I guess.
So did St. Giles go from Roman Catholic to Presbyterian?
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you.
That evening, we were able to have dinner at the Toll Booth Tavern, which is it was a very old tavern, I think 1500s, because that's where the toll booth, when you come into the city, pay a toll, and that's where it was. So it's been there, and allegedly it's haunted, and allegedly I was sitting right by the ghost. Didn't really get to have a good chat with the ghost, but that's fine. But we did get to learn all about the clans, and this is a very poor picture of the clan map, and got to see where all that comes from. And of course, we had our obligatory fish and chips.
Are there two clans at Glencoe, where the Campbells and the
Campbells and the McLeods, yep.
Yeah.
Or not the McLeods, McDonald's, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yep. You ended up not going to Glencoe, right? Okay. So yeah, Glencoe is quite a historic and beautiful place.
Are there any castles left in Scotland?
I don't think any of that would claim Catholicism. I don't know. I haven't done a survey, but I do have a friend who serves a church in the borders of Scotland and England, and she shared a story that she was taking some church folks on a tour of historic sites around the borders, and the tour guide was talking about how this used to be a Catholic site. One of her parishioners said, "There were no Catholics in Scotland." So, so sorry, any stories about Toll Booth Tavern? We had a great time there.
Take the fish and chips away. I'm getting hungry.
I'm sorry. So day 3 was we did a continued tour of the Reformation, and we left Edinburgh and headed towards St. Andrews. And on the way, we stopped in this cute little town called Falkland. And apparently this is a really famous well. It's on some TV show. I don't know. Outlander. And we learned about we're learning about the first Reformation this trip, and kind of historic sites around the area.
And Rebecca?
Yep.
My memory is that Falkland was the seat of the Macduff clan.
Okay, yeah.
At way back in the day. And I was particularly interested in that, took lots of pictures because my mother was a Duff. But the story is that they were Mac Duffs who dropped the Mac when they immigrated from Scotland to Ireland and before they came to the colonies in 1795. So I was really interested in the Mac Duff stuff.
Yeah.
And that was interesting that that was the seat, that clan. And that's just such an important part of it.
Yeah.
Scottish history is what clan was where and who was where, what was what.
Yeah. Yeah. And in these towns, in these teeny towns, there's usually a church, which you'll see behind me. And then there's also a castle. And these castles were where the clan leaders were hosted living. And we saw quite a bit of those. One of my favorite things about Scotland is that you're driving down the road and you're like, oh, there's a castle.
Oh,
Exactly how it is.
I'm sorry, Prue, what was that?
Claims, group.
So there are people who claim clans. I think it's more of a you know, hey, look at us kind of a thing, as opposed to an actual like, we are the clan. But I mean, there's still that heritage there. Yeah.
They were their kilts, their Scottish black kilts.
Yep. Yep. And some of us actually were able to get not kilts necessarily, but tartan that was specifically Church of Scotland tartan. So this is Lookers. This is the castle, or I'm sorry, the cathedral there, the church there that someone climbed in a window. Who remembers that story? Someone climbed in a window here. It was someone who, I can't remember the name, but someone who was hesitant to convert to Protestantism and wanted to change this church that had kind of converted to Protestantism. But if I'm remembering the story, he came to church on Sunday morning and the door was locked. And so he had to climb through a window. And this is as the pastor there is talking about the Bible passage that says, those who don't know me come in not through the door, but through a different way. And so that was kind of his conversion moment of, oh. So anyway, that's what I remember from this.
I don't know if this is true in Scotland, but in Ireland, you paid taxes according to how many windows you had. And it looks like a lot of these windows have been, closed up. And I wonder if that was for tax purposes.
That we also learned that a lot of these kind of enclave things were where what are they called? Not idols, statues,
Yeah.
icons were hosted, and once they converted from Catholicism, they didn't need the icons anymore. And of course, we ended up in St. Andrews, which is where the Reformation kind of kicked off at the cathedral, which is no longer there. There's ruins of it because it was one of the only, that and the castle there were destroyed by the Protestants there. But y'all can come in. But then after those were destroyed, John Knox kind of said, hey, we don't need to be destroying these buildings, and we can just repurpose them. So this is a statue monument to the martyrs there.
When they converted from Catholicism to, was it Presbyterianism?
Yeah.
They didn't try any other religion, Protestant religion or anything. It wasn't one.
Well, yeah, that was the Reformation was kind of when the Protestant understanding of Christianity was really forming.
And it
So.
was Presbyterian.
Well, it became Presbyterian. It's kind of anachronistic to say
were the
they.
Firstborn of the Reformation.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Presbyterians were the firstborn of the Reformation.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true. I think a lot of things were happening simultaneously.
Right.
Yeah.
We had that last week.
Did nonconformists form in Scotland as well as England? The Baptists, the
Yeah.
Methodists, and
We didn't really talk a whole lot about that. Do you
Okay.
remember?
Yeah.
Well, the Methodists didn't come along
Till
until
yeah, John Wesley was.
Right,
Yeah.
I know.
Didn't Henry VIII destroy some of these churches?
Probably, I don't.
I know
that.
he had that big crusade against all
Mm.
kinds of
That was the
monasteries.
monasteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, monasteries, okay, so we need
He was
this,
eliminating all
Yeah,
monasteries.
okay.
So this is one of the worshiping spaces at St. Andrew's Cathedral, University, that we were
Mhm.
able to go to. And yeah.
That's the one you go to there?
Well, this is at the university, St.
Oh.
Andrew's University.
You're attending there?
No, I'm at
Oh,
University of Edinburgh.
Okay.
Yep.
Fiona Hill went there. So Fiona Hill was the woman that stood up against Trump for the impeachment.
Oh, okay.
She attended.
Yeah.
She couldn't get to Oxford. She didn't speak properly. She was from the north.
As did Prince of Wales, Prince William, and
Kate Middleton.
Kate Middleton.
Really?
And apparently while we were, right before we went there, they had been filming episodes of The Crown. So we had just missed that.
Do they have a residence for the king and queen near St. Andrews? Is that why William and all went to St. Andrews?
That I don't know.
We
Yeah.
did at St. Andrews, we saw the coffee shop that they had met.
Oh, yeah.
Big
There's
signs
a
in.
big plaque on the window that says this is where they
And Kate.
met here.
You know, the really important sites.
The Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, we saw the beach where they filmed Chariots of
Oh,
Fire.
really?
And of course,
Yeah.
you know, the 18th hole
Oh,
of,
there's a golf course there?
there's a, yeah. We didn't really know about it. We just kind of drove by and we're like, oh, there's golf course. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that where golf was first started or something?
Perth, yeah.
It was. Okay. The birth of golf.
The birth of golf, yeah. Sorry, before we get there, so this was the end of day 3. Day 4 was a free day. So some folks went to Roslyn Chapel. And I didn't have any pictures of that. But if anybody has any stories or anything they want to share about what they did on their free day.
It was beautiful. I felt it was well worth the time it took. It wasn't that far. I thought it was a couple of hours, but we were 45 minutes, half hour. So it wasn't that far. And it was really quite interesting and beautiful. That's where there's
With the two columns.
yes, the pillars that are in the chapel in the sanctuary. It was a complicated story, but there was a master stonemason who had carved one of them, and everything in there is covered with carvings, little bitty everything's everywhere. And he ran out of inspiration, went to Italy to study, and while he was gone, his apprentice carved the second one, which is much more intricate than anything else in there. It was breathtaking. And the master, correct me, those of you who are with us if I'm wrong, but the master stonemason came back, and instead of being impressed and complimentary, he was furious that his assistant had outshone him in talent and had him executed.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
I mean, there's one of those sweet little.
That's very
stories that
interesting.
you get to run into.
Yeah.
About what life was like in
What
Scotland.
town was this?
It was Rosalind.
Yeah,
The
Roslyn.
reason why we went there was
Link.
Link's
yeah.
daughter was married.
Very
there.
Yeah, and has been made famous by the Da Vinci Code. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that was true, that when they were telling us the history of it, this somebody way back, and I don't know any history, so. Was gonna build a castle, big palace, only got the small chapel done. And then it went into disarray. At some point, they said animals were being housed in it, lots of things, very cute, and you walk in, it's ornate, you know you're in a Catholic place when you walk in. But they were struggling to maintain it. They were getting, I think they said about 30,000 visitors a year, and that was not generating enough money to do much. And then Dan Brown featured it in the Da Vinci
yeah.
Code. And all of a sudden, it ballooned to 200,000 or 300,000 visitors a year. And for them, that was life-saving money that they were using. A neat, very nice visitor center was there. they had to build. I think they just had like a little shack or something.
Right.
They were. But that was the Sinclairs that built it, and Lynn Cummings is an ancestor.
Right.
So.
I know some folks on the free day, our hotel was very close to Holyrood Palace, which is where the monarch, the sovereign, stays when they're in Edinburgh. So, sorry.
I said Balmoral, I'm sorry.
Well, that's their
Yeah, I
kind of
understand.
vacation
Beg your
spot, but no, they come, I think we were told about once a year for a garden party at Holyrood, so good use of space. You all went to Holyrood, right?
Yeah,
You wanna-
I mean, they have a state dinner.
We were also near what's called Arthur's Seat, which is an inactive volcano. And you can hike up it. And we got to learn what all of those yellow flowers all over the place are, and they're called gorse.
Of course.
Yeah, so apparently it's an invasive species, but has just taken over.
With
So,
a trickle.
yeah.
I don't know if anyone went in the Scottish Parliament. But
Hmm.
Had to have the body search to go. But it's sort of interesting, it's very functional, but architecturally it's all concrete and wood. What the design is supposed to be. If you look at it from the sky, not that I was up there, but I saw a photograph of it, and then the benches and stuff is like up-ended rowboats sitting.
Galleys.
That's what boats. And the benches are shaped like, with the same.
It's supposed to blend into the environment, but it really doesn't. It's really an eyesore. It's considered the ugliest building in the world. It is the second ugliest hotel in North
Yeah,
Korea.
that was
So,
my impression is that we just did not fit in with the environment, the architectural environment.
What's it about beauty of the behold?
It's very functional though.
Yeah.
the Scottish Parliament, but I was able to take a tour, and the tour guides were horrified that the British Parliament that I was before charged me almost $50 for
Good.
the tour.
Good.
They're like, "You're getting this for free." And it's a unicameral body, and they said it has one of the largest portions of women in any legislature in the world, with 45%. And one little takeaway that I thought was interesting is, if there's a tie, what they call a split, then the presiding officer, she's a female, she had to renounce her party. So it's different from, say, our Senate, when there's a split, a tie, the vice president comes in and she votes the way the Democrats want. In Scotland, they're required to vote for consistency, not for change. So if there's a tie, change does not go forward.
The parliament does not have, it's
It's
not
not
like,
a majority.
it's not like
It's not a tie.
Westminster with the benches of the government on one side, opposition on the other.
Mhm.
It's like,
In the back benches and the front benches.
it doesn't have, they don't face each other.
Mhm.
So you don't quite get that same simultaneous shouting of you're a jerk, sit down.
Rebecca, did you hear anything about Scotland wanting to pull away from England while you were up there?
I mean, I think that's always a little bit in the atmosphere, but they haven't called for another referendum as far as I know. They did vote a few years back and voted to stay, so.
But they're not trying to pull away from England, they're trying to pull away from the United Kingdom. Really, did I say that right, Paul?
Yeah, I thought, I heard a joke while I was over there. Not trying to be too racist, but you have a British Prime Minister,
India.
who's British born of Indian ancestry, and now the Scottish National Party head is, and he's Hindu. The Scottish National Party head is is a Muslim, Scottish-born Pakistani family.
Right.
And they said the joke is that the two of them were gonna talk about the separation. Like
That's
India-
good for colonialism.
like
That's what
India-
happens.
Like
when you
India and
colonize the
Pakistan
world.
divided.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
interesting.
sort of a current joke going around in London.
I thought our guide said a wonderful, take on that he's Scottish. He doesn't have to be anything. He's always going to be Scottish. And he saw the union with the UK as strengthening everything.
Yeah.
And so he had been in the military of the UK.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's right where it's at.
We have more slides.
Yes, ma'am. So that was our free day. And then we traveled all the way to Oban, which is on the coast. And we didn't really do much there, right? We didn't have any fun. or anything like
Is
that.
that a wee grammar Scotch?
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm gonna tell you about the ride from Edinburgh to Oban was one of the highlights to me because it was in a snowstorm
Yeah.
in the mountains going across, and it was gorgeous. You could see sheep, snow, mountains, it was just beautiful. And that, I thought was just a dramatic ride.
Yeah, we went through all 4 seasons in 2 hours. Yeah. And of course, we did visit the smallest distillery in Scotland and had a great time. Yeah. So the next day was the big day. We were pilgriming to Iona. So this is our first ferry ride of the day. We had 4 in total, and this picture was taken by the Rodens who elected not to go. So they took that picture for us. And then we sent back a picture of our hotel, which is where they were. So we were fortunate to stay right on the water. And this was my favorite hotel of all the hotels these days. So
We needed more time.
amen, amen.
Best breakfast I ever had, it was waffles with bacon on top
Ooh,
and ice cream.
not exactly a full Monty, was it?
I think you and my 9-year-old had the same breakfast. And so we, it was a long morning, but we made it. So this is the Abbey there that's still functioning as a worshiping community. And there we all are in front of it, just to prove that we were there.
Is this where Columba? You said?
Columba, yeah.
He went there.
Yeah, so this is where he went. This
Yeah.
was kind of his resting
Yeah.
place on his way from Ireland to,
Mhm.
yeah. And Melody has some crosses we can look at that are from, or replicas or
Yeah,
miniatures.
I brought some show and tell. So in the last one, you could sort of see a couple crosses, and this is St. Martin's Cross, and it's the only one of the high crosses that's been standing in the same site for over 1,200 years. And this was a new form of worship. This was one that was a little bit further back, and this is St. John's Cross. That one had slats on the side, so they could have put the side pieces in. When there was- when we- yes. All kinds of symbols on those.
And you can see the cross right on it.
Mhm. Yeah, so these are the 2 crosses.
Yeah, one has been standing throughout history, and one on the right. And the one on the left is St. John's Cross, falling down and they resurrected it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not functional.
So we were able to take a audio tour of the cathedral, the Abbey, and then there was also a guided tour as well for some people.
So the island of Iona was the start of Christianity in the United Kingdom. Is that right? That was where he went first. So
Right.
I suppose we always learned there was an island where Christianity started in England, and the United Kingdom. That must have been.
Yeah. So and then this was kind of it kind of laid in it was dormant for a long time until I think the 50s, and someone named George MacLeod came and kind of resurrected it and made it what it is today.
Good.
And I discovered anyway that Iona has its own whiskey that you can buy. So, you know,
How unusual.
how unusual, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, this is.
It was amazing. This day was so beautiful.
It
It
was-
was just like, we got this gift today coming here.
Yeah, it did not rain a single drop the entire day. And I don't know what indulgences I paid in order to make that happen. But I was very pleased.
I thought it was a side chapel there that had the tomb of, I guess, a Duke of Argyle.
Mm.
Who had funded, who had owned the land, I guess, up there. And then set up this charity and helped fund it. And he's there with his, well, the statues are there of him and his third wife. The third wife is there, but he's not there. He's buried, I guess, back at Inver Castle.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. So very historic, very liminal space. So very glad we got to go all the way over there. And then of course we had to go, oh, there's us again. And then, on our way back, we had to drive through mall and we had a genuine mall traffic jam. We had to stop driving in order to let the coups pass. So this is, again, is Richard Stone, and just a absolutely perfect picture. And then we had to take the ferry back, and my son Lee got to pilot the boat for a little while, it seems. But don't worry, he had some help. Do you want to tell any stories about ferrying?
Well, I was in the Coast Guard for many years and I have a master's license still. And so I got a hold of the master and asked if we could come up on the bridge with the disguise of taking my grandson up there. And I took him up there.
Close enough.
I let him pilot the vessel a little bit. It was a 360-degree bridge, which I've never been on one like that. It's so sophisticated. Everything up there is electronic. I mean, you just stand there and it's like Siri, you say, turn left and it goes. You know, it's beyond where I was when I was piloting, but anyway, it was a lot of fun and we got some good pictures of it.
Yeah. So, and that was the night we had to, our dinner plans fell through, so we had to order pizza. So we got to, I was on the phone with the hotel, which was going to provide us a to-go meal. And they said, well, we could either do fish and chips or we could do pizza. And at this point I had more fish and chips than I care to even talk about. So I was like, why don't we do pizza? And they said, well, we could do half and half. Okay, fine. I'm not sure anybody ate fish and chips. Maybe so. Oh, you did? You did? Okay.
I can never get enough.
Never get enough. Great. Well, I had my pizza that night as we were driving furiously to Glasgow.
That's another example of Rebecca taking such wonderful care of us.
Yes, she
Yes.
did. Thank you.
Well, hey, I needed to eat too, so.
There's two quick stories I like to say. Our guides were like family members. It was incredible. First guy we had, Jimmy, he was telling us he had a big lump on his head and real red on one side of his, I kept wondering what happened. He says, well, he said, about 2 weeks ago, I got up in the middle of the night, went downstairs, stepped on a cat, found myself down at the bottom of the stairs in the hospital. So he had a concussion. He kept saying, if I tripping over words, he said, every once in a while, I gotta look at my script because I can't remember anymore because of this. The bus driver coming across Oban actually had tears in his eyes when he was across Mall. He had tears in his eyes because he said, the Queen was the only person I ever knew in my entire life as the head of the Commonwealth. And he was practically crying, but he was gave us such a tour of Mull. It was incredible. He kept pointing things out as we went along. He was a family member as well.
Yeah, yeah. And we drove through on Mull. I kind of skipped over this. We drove through a very significant little town.
Vanessa, we all know the tune to Morning Has Broken. And Eleanor Farjon, who wrote those lyrics to Morning Has Broken, it was a poem she wrote, lived in Vanessa on Mull. And that's why she named it too.
Yeah.
So, the buses used to have to, I noticed he didn't have to, they must have changed the bridge. But the last several times we have gone there, the bus would have to stop and do like a 9-point turn to get across this narrow little bridge right at Vanessa. But they apparently widened it, straightened it out for the buses to get across. That was a traffic jam sometimes. But it's just so beautiful and it's so isolated.
Yeah, yeah. And the road is one way the entire way.
Yeah.
So
Yes, one lane.
passing traffic is not my calling.
They did have places to pull off.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
You learn to go slowly.
And our last day was spent, we worshiped at Glasgow Cathedral, and it was just a wonderful experience. We got to sing, Were You There? And I'm pretty sure we were the only ones there who knew how to sing that song. But it was a great experience, and it was a great kind of wrap up to the trip.
Actually, there's a quicker road from Edinburgh to Glasgow without going all the way around. You went all the way around.
You know, we had to see the whole island, you know.
And we were both impressed and touched. First of all, just as a rule, I find that the people in the UK are much more aware of what's going on in the whole world than we ever are.
BBC.
It is BBC.
Yeah.
But we were there, 1 week after Easter, so Low Sunday. And it was the chaplain of the cathedral who preached that day, not the primary rector or whatever. And there we are a week after Easter, and in his sermon, one of the illustrations that he used was he talked about being so horrified about the recent shooting in Nashville. And the fact that he mentioned that it was so specific and that 6 little children were killed. I was absolutely in tears because one of those 6 little children was my eye doctor's daughter when we lived in Nashville until, just like 2 years ago. And they were just so up on things and so open about talking about who we're called to be as Christians in light of the kinds of things that are happening in the world, what our role is in our job. So really, it was a wonderful worship service for us.
Yeah, and I don't know how he knew we were coming, but he knew we were. He called it. Yeah, he welcomed us specifically, so that was really wonderful.
Well, how many of them have relatives in the United States?
Yeah,
I mean, the Irish are certainly like that. They've all got relatives.
He prayed for Congress to make, American Congress to make some kind of sense with gun control and so forth.
So Judy and I visited with the chaplain afterwards, and he said he subscribes to the Washington Post, and that's where he had read the prayer with the Senate chaplain, Chaplain Black, they both Chaplain Blacks, had done the day after that. And so I made a point to go to the Senate chaplain's Bible study. A friend invited me, because I said, could you take this message that he was quoted from Glasgow Cathedral? And so he said, come, and I used to go regularly when I was a staffer. So our Senate chaplain heard that he was quoted Glasgow Cathedral. He was rather nonplussed about it. I expected more of a reaction, but that's okay.
maybe it was just like a facade he had to put on, so he didn't seem too excited.
What I'd like to say about the whole experience, I don't know whether it was the service exactly or this conversation, but I really did sense that we were being, I guess, treated with a bit of pastoral care by the church over there, because we have to live here where all the shootings are going on. They want to take care of us, I said.
And I was asked so many times, aren't you afraid to go to the grocery store? We spent the next week in England with
Yes.
friends. And they just think every American is terrified walking out our front doors. I don't feel that or experience that every day walking out there. Although I know there are people in places who do, but they're deeply troubled and really concerned for our well-being.
Several people on the ferry come across, I think you were in part of the conversation, said they didn't want to come to the United States because it was.
It had been on their bucket list, but they've taken it off.
When I came to the United States, I wanted to see the West Coast, and all of a sudden they'd come back.
Yeah. So this was our last supper. We had this was at the one of the fanciest hotels, I think, I've been to. Yeah, so this was at the Voco Grand Central, which was right above the Grand Central train station, which was very convenient, very ornate. And again, just, it was in Glasgow. Yeah, and just great hospitality, great food, just a all around wonderful time. And this is, we were talking about how beautiful and remote Mull is. Again, this picture does not do justice, but this is the Three Lakes that it's a pretty famous place in Mull. Yeah. So I am so glad we got to go and felt reformed afterwards, reformed, and hopefully get to go again.
I have to say, you really made the trip special.
Yeah.
You did, they were just wonderful. We are so grateful for your organizational skill and the patience with which you shepherded us through one sort
Few crises.
of. The hotel says you can't come here, but you can go there.
And your son was fabulous too.
Oh, yes, he was.
He's not having
was
this bad.
wonderful.
He was, yeah, and I shout out to all the substitute parents and grandparents that were on the trip, because he still talks about how much fun he had.
It was delightful.
Right. Funny glitches, the first day when we got off the airplane, we said the Marriott Hotel. And the taxi driver looks at us, we walked trying to find the Marriott Hotel. We had the address, couldn't find it, finally we had to hail a cab and say, take us to the Marriott Hotel. They looked at us. Turned out the Marriott Hotel was the Marriott Hotel, but no one knew the name had been changed from the original hotel. And everybody had a problem getting there, but
When
we
the taxi
finally,
drivers don't know.
right. We all finally arrived there to find out the new owners of the Marriott would still have the original name.
And you were able to take a souvenir from the McDonald
Well,
Hotel.
I'm gonna tell everybody that it arrived with a broken glass, but the glass has been fixed. I saw this picture hanging in our hotel room that I really liked, so I went down to the concierge and said, who's the photographer? And he said, he showed me all these pictures and said, this is the one. I said, no. He said, give me your email. I said, go up into the room and look at it. It's an old photograph. Find out who did it, because I'd like to get a copy of it. He said, okay, I'll do that. He took my email. So when I'm getting on the bus and someone, I think it was you, Paul, or someone said, the concierge is looking for Mike DeWitt. I said, here I am. And he says, here's the picture. And he gives it to me right there in the hotel.
My goodness.
This picture like this big and like that wide.
Oh, my goodness.
So the only thing I had, I reached in my pocket, gave him all the money I had in my pocket, only to find out that the current currency was no longer valid in Scotland because it was too old. And so I gave him a tip of old money. But I put it on the bus, took it all the way to Oban. The lady in Oban saw it and wrapped it for me free, and I got it on, and the airlines finally said, yeah, we'll take it. Put it in oversized luggage. It came with the glass broken, but it's already been repaired. But it was so funny, he just ripped it off the wall and gave it.
Really generous.
We traveled with congregants and returned home with new friends.
All right, well, that was Scotland in a nutshell. It's 10:42, so I won't make you answer questions, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you for a wonderful journey home year, and I'm so excited for next year.
May I say something really quickly? It was May 1st of last year that Rebekah came to us. And so this sort of concludes Rebekah's first full year here as our Director of Adult Formation. And we are all incredibly grateful for
Shall
her
we keep her?
leadership and ministry, right? So closing prayer. Amen.
Very good.